Hi, this is Tony Robinson from Across the Pitch podcast for Accrington Stanley. Just a quick review of last year's season. The first back in League Two after 5 years in League One. It was a tough season all the way around with a 17th place finish, but I think it'll be remembered for the firing of longtime manager John Coleman and assistant Jamie Bell. They were fired after the relegation season. That has a lot to do with the 20 years of service to the club and four promotions. But the results weren't there. Ownership and management fell out basically, and the changes have been made. John Doolan is the manager, along with Jed Brennan from Morecambe, and they're building the squad on youth coming through the academy, such as notables as Conor O'Brien, Dan Martin, and Alex Henderson, to mention a few. Look for Tommy Lee and Jack Nolan to move on due to budget issues, but looking for a better season next year. And that's it from Accrington Stanley on Stanley On. Cheers. You can reach me at ToneCat54 on X or acrossthepitch.com. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Edgeworth, and I'm going to be talking about Wimbledon season. I think it was a decent season. We finished 10th in the end, but we had a really good start. I mean, from our season, the season before our, sorry, we finished 21st, and I think the first 13 games, we only lost to Stockport, and I think we didn't get beat for a second time until mid-October. So our start was really good. But yeah, into January, obviously you see some clubs had a good January. We had a massive loss in Al Hamadi, who is now a Premier League player. So when you lose someone of Al Hamadi's quality and the goals he scored for us, like we were obviously gonna, drop a bit when we lost him, and we did that. I think we went from a playoff team, like we were probably gonna get playoffs, to a mid-table team. Obviously, we finished 10th in the end, but if we didn't have Al Hamadi last season, it probably would have been worse. But yeah, I think our biggest moment of the season, quite obviously, is beating Franchise at Plough Lane in the 90th minute. I think that was the biggest moment, and yeah, I think it was a decent season, one you can definitely build off, especially when we finished 21st the year before that. I think we could have probably made playoffs if we had a better manager. Personally, my views are I don't back Johnny Jackson, but you never know. Uh, so yeah, I think we build off 10th, and Johnny Jackson gets backed again by Craig Cope this season, and yeah, I think next season we'll get playoffs. So yeah, thanks.
So then it is Birds of Blue here. I've been asked to come on the Absolute Football podcast to give my overall view of Barrow AFC's season and some key moments. So my overall overview on Barrow AFC's season last year, it was a devastating ending after being in and around the playoffs and automatic promotion spaces for a major of the season. But we had a run of bad form after Morecambe away back in April, where we did unfortunately lose 2-1. And then after that, we went on a bit of a bad run where we lost against Swindon, lost against Gillingham, drew against Crawley, then got beat against Doncaster, got beat against Bradford, and then missing out by 1 point on the final day was heartbreaking. But overall, I still feel like it was a successful season under Pete Wild. He came in and transformed the club from battling out relegation to now being a sustainable club in the Football League and even battling out for promotion. So some of my favourite moments of that season would have to be that 4-1 win away to Colchester United after being 1-0 down at half time. Pete Wild even being sent off after an incident on the field to do with Robbie Gott. Then to come back out second half and score 4 goals. It's a day I'll never forget. Also, Crewe Alexandra away the Friday before Christmas, beating them 3-1 and singing EIEI, EIO up the Football League we go. Like, we're in and around like the playoffs and in and around the automatic promotions on that day, so it was pretty fair enough for us to sing that song. And then finally Bradford away, beating them 2-1. It's always nice to beat Bradford at a big stadium as well, where we take quite a few fans. So it's always nice to go to Bradford and pick up a win there. But thanks for allowing me to do this absolutely football podcast.
So as a Bradford City fan, our season started off good under Mark Hughes, and then it just went to shit really. We dropped down to 14th. His tactics were rubbish, Mark Hughes, playing out from the back, and eventually he got the sack. And then we brought in Graham Alexander, and obviously the players who he has had under Mark Hughes was not his players. So he tried all different formations with it all. We could have got into the playoffs if we brought in better players, and it's just a shame we didn't bring in better players, because we've had players like Ash Taylor, who's now left the club, thank God. You were crap. And then we've released, I think, another 5 or 6 players, I can't remember off the top of my head. But next season going forward, I hope we improve. Graham Alexander brings in players who he wants to bring in. We brought in a couple of players at the minute from Mansfield. I think Callum Johnson, I think his name is. He seems a pretty good defender. We just need to bring in, I think, another left wing backer, another striker, and hopefully a midfielder. And just we need to get cracked on really and improve. There's rumours of Charlie White coming in on social media. If we manage to get him, I think he'd be a fantastic player. He used to play for us in the past. So I'm just hoping we improve this season. And that's it.
Hi all, Si here to talk about Colchester United's season last term. Well, if I'm really honest, I think it's a very disappointing season. As I've already said numerous times before, I really do think it's the hope that kills, and being a Colchester United fan really should be in 101 ways to die, as every time we seem to get somewhere, we seem to get another way to disappoint ourselves. Anyway, the season started, if I'm really honest, I think in quite high hopes. We, as a fan base, felt we had a good squad, and we were able to kick on from what was a disappointing season the season before. But lo and behold, it wasn't to be, and as the season progressed, we got rid of Ben Garner, got Matt Everington in, which was a car crash, to say the least. But then I think the most important part of our season was when in January we managed to get the Cowley brothers to come in and take over finally. While where we finished in the league wasn't exactly where we were aiming for, I think as we went through the season, the second half of it at least, we were able to see what they were trying to bring to the team. We played a lot more fluid attacking football. And so this summer, with the changes we're making, we've got through a lot of the squad has left, and the Cowleys are able now to really stamp their authority on the side, get the players they want, and get us playing how they want us to play. And what we saw in glimpses towards the end of the season, we were on the front foot, we're attacking, we're fighting for everything, and we really have got this sort of do or die attitude, which I think we get another 3 or 4 players in, probably another number 9 we need really, and that will really kick on and move our season forward. I say it every year, last season was very, very poor. This season is going to be our year.
I mean, where do I begin about last season? We were favourites to be relegated. I think 94% of betting odds for relegation out of League Two involved Crawley. Yet here we are, sitting here today, about to get ready for a season in League One. We pushed on into the playoffs just when it mattered most. We annihilated MK Dons 8-1 over the 2 legs, which I think is the highest ever aggregate score in a playoff semi-final. And then when we played Crewe at Wembley, we beat them 2-0. A performance that was fantastic. Every player put on the shift, and really performed to the way that Scott Lindsay and the team have wanted to play throughout the course of the season. Now, to speak about Scott has done an incredible job alongside his coaching staff to really bring out the best in a lot of players. We brought in a lot of players last season who were probably not on everyone's team sheet at the time. They had come from non-league, such as Clyde Lolos or Jay Williams, coming from Oxford City, I think Banbury United. And yeah, he was really able to bring out the best in them. Got Danilo Orsi, who'd scored 5 goals in the previous 2 seasons, and this season he's scoring 24, 25 goals, which is just incredible. Next season is going to be tough for Crawley. There's some big teams in League One, such as Birmingham City, such as Huddersfield, Bolton, all with bigger budgets, with bigger fan bases. But we believe that Scott can put the best in the Crawley players and to make sure that Crawley aren't just there to make up the numbers, but can really put in a performance and maintain that League One status.
Yeah, last season for Crewe, Alex, was it was a special season against all odds, really, that sort of carried on until we eventually got to that unpredictable final, really. Crawley Town versus Crewe Alexandra, 2 of the teams tipped to, for relegation at the start of the season, to make it to the final game, to make it to the game for promotion. And obviously we came up short, but it was a season that was fun, and it was a season that had so many key moments and so many moments that will stay with fans for years now as well. We had that special night against Doncaster in the playoff semi-final second leg, where everyone, including ourselves, had written us off, and we did it against all odds. We had 90 plus 10th minute equaliser away at Wimbledon. We had some of the greatest Crewe performances I can remember in Mansfield, Barrow and Stockport away. And yeah, I think the team battled for each other. They battled for the badge. Lee Bell is a man who motivated pretty much, the fans, the players, everyone involved at the club. And I think he was a special man for last season, and the big reason why I'm optimistic for next season as well. I think it's a season that we'll remember for a long time, and one that we can learn a lot of lessons from, in the feeling of coming up just short and knowing how close you were to perfection, both in automatics and that day at Wembley. So yeah, it was a special season, but one that ended with heartbreak ultimately for Crewe fans.
Hello, Absolute Football Pod. This is Danny from Rambling Rovers. Doncaster Rovers season was pretty much a season of 2 halves. The first half showed much improved performances from the previous season, but unfortunately we weren't getting the results we desired until the second half of the season. Absolute chalk and cheese between them both. Second half of the season where the Rovers really did click, and coincidentally made 3 very good loan signings at the beginning of our 10-game winning run. Them 3 loan signings in Timothy Lolatala, keeper from Hull, Matt Craig, midfielder from Tottenham, and Akiba Delican, who we got on loan from Lincoln City. And like I said, we went on a 10-game winning run during season. Gate crash for playoffs, which seemed an impossible task 3 months prior. But unfortunately, the Rovers fell just short in the playoffs to Crewe Alexandra. Despite the outbreak of a playoff defeat, the general feeling around the Rovers fan base, I feel, is a positive one going into the 24-25 season.
Trying to find 2 minutes to talk about any positives about Forest Green Rovers this season is going to be tough, and I know that. But we're going to do it because we love football, and we're going to start off with negative. That's 2 on the bounce now for us, relegations, which isn't the nicest, because if you look at the previous seasons we've had it within League Two, we've proven probably one of the better teams out of most the past few seasons, always in the playoffs or the automatics. we were always a good team to play, and we fried a lot of teams, and it's a huge change for a club to do that. But we are back in the National League. We're no strangers to the National League after spending 19 years there before we got our first ever promotion. But looking at the season, where did it all go wrong? First of all, recruitment. We didn't get it spot on. We'd signed David Horseman. His previous experience within football would have been in Southampton in the academy. So we're trying to go down that route like we did with Rob Edwards that time, and sadly it didn't work out. And then the club thought it'd be suitable to go for Troy Deeney as a manager, and obviously that did not last long. Then we found a bit of faith with Steve Cottrell, and we did look like we were going to stay up. We started getting results and we started playing really, really well. Unfortunately, we didn't get it over the line. Many questions you could have asked about that. Personally, I could see if Cottrell came in instead of Deeney, we would have stayed. But who knows? Who knows? That's football. But it's going to be sad not being in the EFL next season. It's going to be weird, but the National League is going to be a great season next year, I know. And I hope we'll be back sooner enough rather than later. So, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Love the podcast. Carry on the good work.
Good evening, everyone. Jules in the blood here. How would I describe the Jules 23-24 campaign? Well, I think it's fair to say that you can break it down into three sections. If we go all the way back to summer 2023, we were still under the stewardship of Neil Harris, and after 4 matches, we had won all of them. We had not conceded a goal, and we sat proudly atop League Two, looking down on everybody else. Of course, we knew at the time that winning games by 1-0 was never going to be sustainable, but it still came as a shock to me when, first week of October, Neil was relieved of his duties after a 2-0 defeat at Crewe Alexandra, with the Jules still in 8th place, just 4 points off the summit and a place outside the playoff positions. We then had a month of interim manager Keith Millen while the search for a replacement for Harris went on. In that time, we played 5, we won 2, we drew 1 and we lost 2. Notable victories were against MK Dons and Swindon, but there was a very disappointing defeat against Newport County at the Priestfield in that time. But then, as October rolled into November, Stephen Clements was tasked with being the new man in charge to take us in a new direction, to bring us more attractive football and improve us as a football team and a football club. Did Stephen ever do that? For me, unfortunately, no. There was a lot of good moments, but in between that, there was plenty of poor ones as well. If you look at games against Forest Green, 0-0 draw away and a 1-1 draw at home, just wasn't good enough against a side that were poor throughout the campaign and finished bottom. In terms of good moments, there was a victory over Notts County in February. There was that really good 3-1 win against Salford in his first home league game. We went to some other places like Salford and won well, came from behind towards the end of the season at Morecambe, but there were just too many moments where you felt like you wanted more from the football club. Like I said, them 2 draws against Forest Green, there was too many draws at home in general. I think from Boxing Day to the end of the season, we were unbeaten in about 12 games at Priestfield, but I think we only won 3 of them. And ultimately, Stephen Clements paid the price as we finished 12th, and he was removed from his job just a couple of days after the season ended.
My name is Jordan Richards. I've been asked by the beautiful people at the Absolute Football podcast to just do a little quick summary of Grimsby Town's 23-24 campaign. And to be quite honest, I don't really want to speak about it. It's only just gone out of my memory as to how poor, underwhelming of a season it was. So, but yeah, that's probably how I'll describe it. Underwhelming, a failure, I think disappointment as well after the previous season where we finished 11th, the highest league position for 17 years, and we reached the FA Cup quarter-final. So I think expectations were high, but it sort of just fell flat on its face, really. We didn't start the season too badly, but it quickly petered out. Some of the performances weren't good enough, and some of the results were just as poor, which eventually meant Paul Hurst lost his job when we lost 1-0 to Doncaster at the end of October. It was probably the right move at the time, and I stand by it. I think the time was right. We had a change. So David Artell came in at the end of November. Performances got better. We did pick up 1 or 2 results, but again, quickly faded out. We picked up some absolute disastrous results. Losing 6-1 at home to Walsall was poor. The 5-1 at home to Doncaster was unforgivable, and quite frankly, could have lost him his job if it was any other club, any other board. But we stuck by him, and he changed the system. I think he had to, because if he didn't, we was only going one way, and that was down the Football League and probably back into non-league, in which we can't, as fans, we can't really go there again. As with the greatest respect at least. So I think he deserves immense credit for somewhat steadying the ship a little bit, and we sort of survived, I say somewhat quite comfortably in the end, which didn't feel like it at all, because all season we've really struggled as well, and we should probably count ourselves lucky that eventually we finished 21st, but there was 2 teams eventually that were worse than us that weren't down, but there were somehow 3 worse teams than us. So I think it is probably, we need to put this season behind us. I'd like to think it's just a blip. We've got a manager that's been there and done that. Hopefully, he can bring in his players to implement his style that he wants to do, which we sort of saw in the early days of Dave Artell's reign. And who knows what can happen. I think any sort of evident progress is probably good progress next season. I probably want a mid-table finish, but we'll see what happens. But I think it simply can't be any worse than this season. I think if it is any worse than this season, we're probably going through that trapdoor again, in which no town fan wants. So yeah, that's pretty much it. One to certainly forget, that's for sure.
Unfortunately, we were unable to arrange a review from a Harrogate Town fan, but as an overview, they finished 13th in their 4th successive season in League Two. With a strong run in January and February, which saw Harrogate in the playoffs discussion, they ultimately fell away, while still recording their highest ever league finish and points total.
Hello everyone, it's Amber and Blue here. This is probably our 28th millionth take of this. So yeah, it's been a phenomenal season really. Promotion at the end of it, everything we expected and wanted, and yeah, it just feels great. What are your thoughts, Edward?
Amazing. That'd be brilliant.
And what were your standout games?
Probably the Accrington Stanley one at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably Davis Keeler done spicy, and Aaron Lewis's volley from halfway line.
Both at Accrington away. I think for me it's the MK game, the emotions that we felt when Keeler done scored, and and Hewitt to equalise. It was just fantastic. I'd not experienced that in a long time. But yeah, I just think the players have been fantastic. And it's a good end. Everybody wants to get promoted. We've tried for so long. We've finally done it, and here we are now in our new League One shirts. So yeah, thank you for having us, and take care and have a good season, everyone. And you'll be seeing us at a League One ground soon, won't they, Edward?
Yeah.
Hi guys, thank you for asking me to record this short overview of last season. Didn't get off to the greatest of starts, got to be honest. We were top in August and September, but the football really wasn't great under Alexander. The fans really didn't take to him, and in the end we managed to get Mike Williamson in, which appears to be a real good appointment at the minute. We had the best form in League Two, certainly for the first 3 or 4 months that Williamson was in charge. Highlights included winning away at Mansfield, when we really thought we had a chance of automatic promotion, but unfortunately our soft touch and our lack of leadership in the side really let us down when it mattered. Stockport away, Mansfield at home, and obviously the 2 games against Crawley in the playoffs really showed what a weak underbelly we had. Shout out to Alex Gilby and Max Dean, 2 players that gave absolutely everything for the cause. Also, I think if we can get a decent goalkeeper in, one that the fans trust and one that can organise a defence that's lacking belief rather than ability, I think we'll be more than fine. Keep our attacking options the way they are, and I think we can definitely have a go at getting top 3 in probably a slightly less competitive League Two next season. And that's no disrespect to the other 23 teams in there. Hope that Willingham backs Williamson in the transfer window, gets the players he needs, and fingers crossed for a brilliant season next season.
Let's talk Morecambe FC's season last season. To put it bluntly, it was a rollercoaster of emotions. It was hard. The first half of the season felt incredible. We was winning so much and we were pushing near the top half of the table, and it felt like, oh my God, are we going to go to Wembley? Are we going to get in the playoffs? Like, it felt surreal. It didn't feel real. But then obviously Derek left, and then come around to January and you have loan players that are playing brilliantly like Eli King and Michael Mellon. They're going to go back, and then you don't really find anyone else to fit in their role as well as they did. And it's hard as a lower league fan, as many will know. Loan players are a huge part of your team, and to lose them is difficult because they are such huge key players, and you're never going to be able to find someone to fit what they did. Going into the second half of the season was hard because we obviously lost Derek, we lost our loan players, we was losing, we couldn't shoot on target. It felt like the end was coming, but somehow we survived. And I think all Morecambe fans can say that's all we wanted from last season, was to survive. And again, this is all we want from next season, is to survive. But we don't want to live like this anymore. We want to sell the club and be offering our key players better contracts. Like, we can only offer 1 year, and then it's a rebuild year after year after year. And it's so tiring that doing this rebuild, and all I want is for this club to be sold and for us fans to feel safe going into next season thinking, oh, my club's going to be there next season. Not like this season when we're thinking, oh, we might not have a club by August. It's terrifying. So most importantly for next season, I want the club sold, and I want us to survive and just enjoy football, because that's all we can do right now because we don't know what's going on with the club.
So in terms of a very brief Newport County season review, going into the season, talking August of last summer, I think a lot of Newport fans, myself included, would have just been happy with anything above 23rd because of many things that was happening off the scenes that would take too long to summarise in this video. But off of that basis, we finished 18th, clear of relegation, didn't really have any scare at any part of the season, so it was successful. You can look at our results and see inconsistencies in form, and that's probably another way to define the season. But I think the main thing that we kind of noticed, and the main thing that caught us out at certain points, because in March, late February, early March, we were on a push for playoffs, which was bizarre to see given the fact we were like a lot of people's favourites to go down alongside Crawley. But yeah, we had these games against Manchester United, Wrexham and Swindon, Gillingham. We had all of this in January, which gave us that momentum to build, but we almost lost that steam towards the end. But I think the basis of summarising this season, and in terms of a main thing of if you are to define it in one word, injuries, which is really unfortunate because if we would have had a bigger squad potentially, who knows, we wouldn't have lost the last 8 games of the season, and we would have been in the fight for promotion until the final day, or at least the fight for playoffs. But albeit successful season, of course, throughout the season, about midway point, we had the announcement that Hugh Jenkins would take over the club, and since then, there's been a lot of change and a lot of transition going into this season. But yeah, a Newport County overview for the 2023-24 season. Overall, it was successful, but there were patches of inconsistency and, like I said, injuries.
Tom here from Notts County Talk. What a strange season last year was for Notts fans. Met some expectations of fans, which was just to get a mid-table finish. Massively underperformed in some fans' eyes with not even getting into the playoffs. In my opinion, I'd have been happy with just outside the playoffs. The way this season started, we were electric. We were, scoring lots of goals, going on to concede lots of goals, which I'll talk about in a second. But being first, in October to where we finished, and even still being in the playoffs in the new year to where we finished, I think it was a bit of an underachievement, and I think the club recognised that. Key moment for us, absolutely 100%, was the injury to Matty Palmer, a season-long injury in a big game at Meadow Lane. Not having him in the midfield meant we had to bring in Scott Robertson in January, who did a fantastic job for us, but he wasn't Matty Palmer, and it took him a little bit of time to get up to speed. We also got big injuries to our second striker, Kevin Scott, who scored double figures for us in the National League the year before, and Gerardo Badrami, who has now joined Burton Albion. We didn't get to see the best of him, which is really, really unfortunate. Yeah, we scored so many goals, but we conceded so many as well. You can make a highlight reel that for some teams would be 10 years of mistakes. We got it in one season. So painful to see. But the way this preseason's gone so far, I am thinking to myself, maybe it's best that we didn't get promoted. 3 very, very strong teams in the automatic places that went up, and then Crawley as well. So I think we're going to be in a good position this season to rebuild. Last season was a tough one, a really tough one to watch. Attendance has stayed pretty consistent throughout the season, and for a first year back in the Football League, let's be honest, we stayed up with relative ease.
Yo, what's going on? Generation Red podcast. Shouts to Absolute Football Podcast for asking us to do this. Sorry it took so long and we look absolutely knackered, but we did just become champions tonight, didn't we?
Yeah.
We're champions. But we had a better season for under 10s than we did with Salford, didn't we? I think that's to be said, especially after the fantastic playoff run the year before. This year was a bit all over, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it though? What was your favourite part of this season?
Favourite part? Beating Leeds.
Beating Leeds. I think that's one thing we did have with Salford. We had a really good cup run. We beat Preston North End. We beat Leeds United. We should have beat Peterborough. We took them to a replay and some dodgy refereeing resulted in us going out on penalties. But there was some exciting times, weren't there, this year?
Yeah.
Some big games. Big result against Wrexham at home. Big result against Crewe. We started the season really well, and then injuries just sort of hit us really quickly, didn't they?
You know what I noticed? As soon as Calmentary got injured, we clapped.
As soon as Callum Hendry got injured. We went, I think, at the start of the season, just before Neil Wood's 10 years sort of ended, we had something like 12 first team injuries. We went to Stockport away, and I think 4 or 5 of the first team were all kids, weren't there? But on the flip side of that, there has been some positives with that. We've got to see Kelly and Mai, Junior Lawamba all come through, Liam Humbles.
They were down there, but now they've came up and right for the first team.
That's what we want to see, don't we?
Yeah.
You looking forward to next season?
Yes, and I hope that striker we just bought
Cole Stockton.
does good.
Yep.
But don't replace Calmendra.
Yeah, no, you won't replace Callum. Looking forward to this year. It's been a shame to lose Matt Smith and Elliot Watt, especially. Mariappa has gone as well. But I think some good recruitment this year under Carl Robinson. He's not announced where he's gone. I don't know if he's retired or not. But, you know, let's see where we end up. Yeah. But we'll be back with Generation Red following the team all season as well. So, shout out to everyone that's watching. What are we, Miles?
Champions!
Champions!
Wait, Salford, you need to win one of these.
Yeah, you do.
Hi everyone, I'm Rob. I'm a massive Stockport County fan, and I've been asked by my lovely friend Claire Jeffs to do a review of our season. Having lost the playoff final on penalties the year before, it was difficult to know how the season was going to start, and in the end we only won one of our first 6 league games. And even though there were flashes in those games that we could be a good side, we were struggling a little bit too. Nobody could have prepared us for what was coming next. We turned up at Wimbledon halfway through September, 30-degree heat, and a squad so torn apart by injuries that we had to name 2 keepers on the bench to make up the numbers. But a victory that day started a record-equaling 12 league game winning run, which propelled us to the top of League Two. Only coming to an end on a miserable day in Newport in November, although we would get 93rd minute revenge on them in March. Special mention's got to go to the 8-0 victory at home to Sutton in December for my birthday game. And I, in 30 plus years supporting County, I've never seen us score 8 goals in a game before, and that was fantastic. And on it went, generally getting decent results, staying top until we hit a blip mid-February time, 1 win in 7, knocked off the top spot. And when MK Dons came to town towards the end of March, if they'd beaten us that day, we would actually have been knocked out of the top 3. But they didn't, and that was the game it changed. A 5-0 victory that day started a run of 8 consecutive victories that would take us to promotion and ultimately a title-winning night away at Notts County. Player of the season, our gold and glove-winning keeper Ben Hinchliffe, who's been with us since the National League North. He's now won 3 titles with us and just keeps getting better. Special mentions for Fraser Horsfall and also for Paddy Madden, who definitely stepped up towards the end of the season when we needed somebody. Young player of the season, Ethan Pye,
left-sided centre-half who will surely outgrow us one day and is fantastic. And finally, moment of the season. Alongside the easy ones of promotion-winning nights and title-winning nights, it's got to be Colchester away. A couple of weeks before the end of the season, a narrow win in a really difficult game. And then at the end of the game, the whole squad and coaching staff all stood arm in arm in front of the away end while we sung the anthem to them on a night when we'd pretty much done what we'd set out to achieve at the start of the season. So congratulations to Wrexham and Mansfield who joined us in League One, and a special shout out to Crawley who've done brilliantly. So there we are, 32 games, 19 grounds visited with my 2 young kids and some brilliant friends. I can't wait till August.
Hello, I'm Mike from Sutton Podcast, or in fact Sutton United Talk Time Podcast. There's my little flag there. Name so good I have to spell it out. SUTT on podcast. Sutton Podcast. It's genius, and I have to explain it every time. I wish I picked another name. You asked about last season. Start last season, although people are denying it, actually thought big things. All the players that we'd signed, good, solid players, probably our best team. In fact, I said it several times in my reviews for the season. It was on paper our best team. Unfortunately, we play on grass. I did consider breaking into Green Lane and covering it all in paper at one stage because we were that poor. Opening day was great. It was a great time. Big 5-1 win, and delighted to see how the season was unfolding. Unfortunately, we stumbled and the team just didn't gel. One of those really undefined things. You don't know why it's happening, but for whatever reason, the team just didn't gel. Unfortunately, it ended up resulting in Matt Gray losing his job, and Matt was the person who brought us into the Football League for the very first time. And I think it's our first sacking, as far back as we can go, is 80 years that people remember, but we don't remember a manager being sacked. Deciding to leave, yes, but we then stumbled and struggled through the season, and we got Steve Morrison in and faced a really big task because he's got a lot of demotivated players and they needed that self-belief, and it just wasn't there. So we didn't get the new manager bounce. It went on for a little bit longer than you'd expect, but it did come good at the end of the season, and we actually had some really good form coming to the end of the season. And we went into the last round of games really hopeful that we could do it, but unfortunately it was not to be. And we are relegated, so I won't be able to wear my EFL shirt for very long. But we're looking forward to what National League brings and meeting some old acquaintances again. So, yeah, see some of you soon. Bye.
Hey, Absolute Football team. Swindon Town season review simply wasn't good. Just really wasn't good. On the pitch, terrible. Off the pitch, even worse. It wasn't what we hoped for, wasn't what we wanted, wasn't what we expected. Just truly terrible. The recurring theme throughout was our complete lack of ability to defend. We saw it in pre-season. Even when results were good at the start of the year, defence was still a question. Turning point seemed to be defeat at Notts County. We had been unbeaten and then we just never recovered. Flynn left. Was it the right decision? We'll probably never know. But Gunning coming in certainly didn't help. And we didn't help him, to be fair, but it certainly didn't help. Results continued to be poor. Performances continued to get worse. There were some highlights in terms of results, and there were some individual performances of note. You look at young Kemp, Glatzel in the second half of the season, but yeah, it was just really, really not good. So let's hope that things do improve for next season.
This is my season review for the 23-24 season at Tranmere Rovers. Well, we started off with Ian Dawes, and it was a really bad appointment. Prior to our first game of the season, he'd never actually managed a game of football in the EFL, which was obviously disappointing for the fans. Pre-season against Southport, we lose, and it was an own goal that caused us to lose. A goal does to send the 10 to the side of the game. Then we eked out a draw against Vauxhall Motors. First game of the season, Barrow at home. It was replicated from the year before, where we'd also lost 2-1 to Stevenage. Both teams massively punching above their weight, like Barrow did this season. Stevenage got promoted and Barrow just missed out in the playoffs. But it's a running theme, so maybe it'll happen next year. Ian Dawes is sacked after the Colchester game,
which was a 2-0 defeat away at Colchester, which is just the final straw. I mean, I think we all knew it was coming after the Fleetwood loss in the Pizza Cup. Then we get to the Nigel Adkins being appointed as interim. He gets 6 really valuable points against Bradford and Accrington, and then he's appointed on a permanent basis after a long time of waiting. Then we do the 12 points of Christmas, the 4 games over Christmas. We get all 12 points from them. They were massive. We thought we were on a playoff push, but that sort of didn't happen because our form faltered, especially after Christmas. In the new year, in the second half of the season, we get the 3 highlights of the season for me, which is a 2-1 victory at home over league leaders Mansfield Town. Then we get a 4-0 victory over league leader Stockport County. And then the best game of the season, or the best game I've ever been to, best away fans that I've ever seen from Tranmere Rovers, was a 1-0 away victory at Wrexham, our local derby. So all in all, the season's been okay, but it could have been better. We were desperate for points. We were in a relegation battle, and Nigel Adkins, and maybe with a little help from Rob Apter, has turned us around. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll see us in the playoffs next year.
Walsall's 23-24 season was incredibly mixed. We started off pretty poorly. We looked as though we weren't going to be achieving much in the season. It was Matt Sadler's first full season in charge of the club, and I think fans were starting to really get on his back, and at one point it did seem that he was 1, maybe 2 results away from losing his job. Then something clicked around the end of November, start of December, where we had what looked like an incredibly tough run in, and then suddenly we were getting wins, picking up really valuable points, and then going into the new year and into February, March, suddenly we were in a playoff push, which we ultimately fell short of, mainly because of our lack of points in the first part of the season. But what was quite noteworthy is that the squad rallied during an injury crisis. We had at one point 2 fit centre-backs. We had to recall Roland Meniesse, who was out on loan, who ended up playing, I think, 1 or 2 games for us. One of the other centre-backs was a loanee who was making his first sort of appearances in league football, and the other had started as a centre mid, and yet we still managed to pick up points. Ultimately, though, the injuries in the squad started to play its part, and the loss of Freddie Draper, who we'd had on loan until January, also played its part. He picked up points for us single-handedly when play wasn't going well, and I don't think we really fully replaced him. We're going to have issues going forward. We've lost Isaac Hutchinson, and equally we've not got that Draper type of striker yet, but hopefully we can build off of what was generally a positive season.
So, overview of last season, how did you find it?
It was an absolute roller coaster, if I'm honest. It was a case of when we came into that season, I felt we had some good momentum. I just wanted a decent push for the playoffs. I didn't want to rest on our laurels. I thought a decent push for the playoffs would be fine for me. But you start winning games and then you start realising, hang on a minute, we could actually push here and, for automatic promotion. Some real key games in the season, beating Mansfield at home, beating Crawley at home, beating Stockport at home. I mean, they were the games that really pushed us on. And I think the season as a whole really exceeded my expectations. I'm just really looking forward to League One next season. What about you?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the season, I think I was quite naive. I was like, yeah, we're going to go back to back. We're going to be champions of League Two. But, like I said, I think I was really naive because obviously, I've not been a fan for, forever. But yeah, I think the key moments for me, is winning against Forest Green Rovers and being able to go out on the pitch with our son and your dad and my brother and nephew, it's just, do you know, it's just one of those feelings that I don't think you can like recreate. It's just, you know, you're on the pitch, you know, you where you watch the lads week in, week out, and it's just, yeah, I'm looking forward to League One. Bit apprehensive.
Yeah, some big teams in League One.
Yeah, maybe not as confident as I was in League Two, but you know, you just don't know. We've still got signings to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just don't know.
Back to back to back.
Back to back to back, baby.